Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 246 of The Ball is Round. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight we have a very, very special holiday episode where we will discuss CF Montreal's busy offseason, FC Supra du Quebec's first official signing, and so much more. As always, I'm joined by the man himself, Elias Grigoriadis. How we doing, dude?
I'm fantastic.
Dude,
Honestly, I'm doing great.
you
Barcelona is doing great. CF Montreal is buying players. Supra is getting the right people. We'll talk about that in a bit. Everything is happening. So
Exactly. And
not too
look,
bad.
guys, last time we spoke, last
Bayern
time we
Munich
went,
drew. This is a great week. It's a
sorry,
great week.
I did not hear
Bayern
that.
Munich also. Bayern
I
Munich drew. It's a
I
fantastic week.
I don't understand that
Unbelievable.
language. But anyways, 'cause but anyways, last time we spoke, guys, we said that we were gonna take a break from the holidays. We said on the page too, but Elias, we were talking about it, and we were like, dude, there's
Too
just
much
too
is
much
going on.
going on right
Yeah,
now.
there's too much
There's
going on.
just too much going on. We can't stay quiet. I have so much to say. It's just this
Yeah.
this team has been gifting us during this holiday season so many bombs of news, which I'm just saying words. Hopefully, it improves our algorithm within YouTube. Just saying words out there, Elias. Like bombs and all that. But no, it's just been an incredible off season. Elias, are you all set and ready to go for the holidays? Have you done your Christmas shopping?
I have
Uh,
some odds and ends left. I have some, but most of the holiday shopping is done. I have some small things I have to take care of. But other than that, holiday
yeah,
shopping is very stressful
dude, I've done
because
zero.
the
I've
the,
done
the the
zero.
the FBI agent, bots that are trying to sell you all this shit are out in full force, and I've got to like shield myself from all the nonsense.
Dude, at work they're doing Secret Santa.
Stay
My
woke,
family's
folks.
doing Secret Santa, and I bought zero, and I gotta whisper that I didn't do my shopping yet because somebody will come in here and destroy me into pieces. Anyways, this is not about Christmas. We're talking about soccer. We're talking about what we love to do. So, um, before we get started, guys, just a quick reminder, you guys, we gift you everything for the holiday. So we ask you guys to give us a little gift, and the gift that we receive, Elias, is free. So just a quick reminder that if you listen to the show and like what you hear and see, click on the subscribe button to support The Ball is Wrong. While you're at it, make sure to also subscribe to all of our social media platforms for daily updates. We're on Reddit, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on X, we're on Blue Sky, everywhere, guys. So if you love what you see, you love what you hear, you love us. Follow us on our personal page, and that's it. So let's get started. First off, first things, CF Montreal's busy off season. Elias,
Yeah.
when was the last time we had a December like this? I don't know why it feels like
Usually they're looking for a coach before they sign any players,
you
so
know
that's why this is not this is weird.
it's usually very quiet. There's not like, even the goodbye, even the players that are not that are let go are usually very quietly. But the thing is, Elias, also this is weird to everybody because now we have three professional soccer teams. That means
Yeah.
that all three professional soccer teams are working to sign, release, sign, which gives us so much content, which is what we love to do here at The Ball is Round, right? But as I mentioned, we're going to talk about with TF Montreal first. I know we're taking a little bit back, Elias, and but I do want to talk a little bit about this because we never got the chance to sit down here at the show and you give your take about it. So a few weeks
Mhm.
ago, CF Montreal organized a sit down between media members and head coach Marco Donadel to get to know him a bit better on the field and off the field. The ball is round was included in this. And Elias, we just wanted to take a quick second to mention that we love this initiative from the club, that they have taken the initiative, as I mentioned, to reward those who covered the team throughout the season. And we really wanted to go ahead and thank CF Montreal for including us for this. Elias, you were present at the sit down.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give us a quick summary of what you expected when you went
Yeah,
before
I'm
there?
there's more in depth on our Patreon, by the way. Quick plug on that.
Yes.
But what it really was, and again, it's something that I haven't heard of, at least this to the extent where multiple media members are invited. But um, it was a purely tactical conversation. Yeah, like at the beginning, there was a bit of a conversation about his motivations and his pathway through coaching, both in Italy and in North America, but specifically, it was about, how he sees the game, his philosophies, his beliefs, and how he puts that onto the pitch in Montreal. And it was a very interesting conversation. Offensively speaking, as the article says, you don't really, there's not that much to learn. What you see is kind of what you get. The build out is a more, obviously went into more depth about the building out from the back. But once this team gets into, like, the final third and gets into offensive transitions, um, that's exactly what he's looking for, right? You have the wingers, you have, the people that need to be difference makers in the middle of the park. And I for one think that, offensively speaking, that wasn't really chance creation, right? We've spoken about this throughout the season. Chance creation was never the problem. Not never, but it was very rarely the problem. The problem was the final thing, was the final ball, was the final shot, was finishing. That's obviously still a problem, and that comes also down to personnel and confidence. But tactically, I don't hate the way he attacks. The bigger problem was defensively, right? Everyone's like, "What's this man to man? What?" Nobody really understood, and that's kind of one of the first questions that was asked. So much so that, like, it was funny because we were talking about we split the conversation to offense and defense, right? With the ball and without the ball.
Mhm.
And there were questions about there was a question about the man to man, and then Marco goes, "We're talking about with the ball now. We'll stay with," and it was very funny because you could tell people are eager to kind of pick his brain about, you know how this works. The more, and because again, we only see the finished product, and we saw that, at times it worked wonderfully in disrupting opposition. Other times, one individual mistake in the house of card, forget, tumbles down, it gets, shot with a bazooka, right?
Right.
And it hit back on the counter, or there's a massive lapse in coverage, because again, this is all based on individual responsibility. And that's something that he is incredibly reliant upon, is individual reliability and responsibility. And, can you as an individual do your job to help the group succeed? And he asked for that on both sides of the ball, right? That's the reason why he loved Fabian Herbert so much, right? That's the reason that, and again, I think Fabian Herbert's had a very good, for the little time that he was fit, I thought he was a very, important player, and I think he put in some really good performances. But, I was a little bit confused as to why Marco Dondell was so enamored with the idea of Fabian Herbert. He was playing him over O'Hare Escobar. He was playing over Caden Clark. He was playing him. He's even playing him over Ivan Jaime towards the end of the season. So the reason is because individually, Fabian Herbert makes very few mistakes. He's a prototypical German, Swiss Army knife, where his individual responsibilities and his judgment and his positioning are very solid. And again, he's not a match winner. He's not going to blow the game wide open. But what he will do is contribute in his role very effectively. And I feel like that's something that Marco Donadel really wants. And again, we're going to go into some of these acquisitions that Montreal did, and you're going to see, and it's going to kind of, you know, lead you towards understanding, okay, this is why, these players are being brought in, because they fulfill exactly these kinds of roles. And so, is it a man-to-man? Is it not a man-to-man? It's not a man-to-man system. What it is just an extremely aggressive and extremely, the attempt, to be an extremely disruptive system. And so the foundation of it is solid, tactically speaking, right? I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty because, again, there's some secrets and there's tricks of the trade, and you don't want to,
Give everything away, right?
exactly, right. You don't want to break
Yeah.
down an entire thing because, again, that's not what we're doing here. We're just here to better understand his ideas. But it's not a man-to-man system. It's just, it's an extremely aggressive system, but the bones are solid. Now it just comes to the point where, do you have the right people in the right spots?
Right.
And last year he didn't. He inherited a team. It was a new system. People didn't really get it. People came in mid-season. People that expected to play one way at the beginning of the year ended up having to play a completely different way. So I understand why there were some mistakes. Some people left. Some more people are going to leave. And I think that, a good barometer for next year is incremental improvement. So again, we'll have to see with how effective this press is and this defensive scheme is. But right now, you know, he at least some of the concerns I had, some of the personal concerns I had, have been assuaged. Not all of them. I still have some issues, and And I think that, it's impossible to be completely satisfied with the tactical system. There's always going to be some kind of counterplay, but I see the validity and I see the merit.
Hmm. And thank you for expanding on that. And guys, Elias just touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but yes, he did write an article that is available on our Patreon. Please go ahead and give it a the. Yeah, I mean, you broke it down excellent, Elias. I read it from top to bottom. I think 3 times. I think it was a fantastic article where he really summarized it exactly what it is, the takeaways that it was. To sit down with Marco Donadel, because again, a lot of the times, Elias, we can have 3 hours of content, but it's all about breaking it down and summarizing it so that we can understand it, right? Because it's a lot of words, a lot of things that even you, Elias, and or I, in the moment, you're like, shit, I really don't understand anything that was just said. Like, let me just kind of go back to it and kind of reflect on what was said and break it down, right? So, what would you say is something that maybe you learned about Marco Donadel? I know that you said you talked a little bit about, but what about him? Did you learn anything that maybe gave you a better understanding about him, about how the season went, how 2025 went for him?
Yeah, no, he loves, you know, having this hands-on approach. He loves it's a very old school kind of mentality where, yeah, obviously he'll delegate, that's what a staff is for, but he wants to be involved in every single aspect of, the club and of the players and of the first team. And so, whether it's small tactics, whether it's physical fitness, whether it's recovery, whether it's activate anything, right? And I think that now that he's kind of been able to establish himself and he's got, the next year set, right? Again, he has a contract for the next year. We'll see what happens in the season, right? Montreal has never shied away from letting people go, but he'll have the chance to even further apply this kind of control, right? And again, this is just I feel like this is also like an old school Italian kind of thing, right? Where, Italian managers and Italian football in general is very traditional. I think it still is, right? You look at Serie A now, still a very tradition. Like it has a brand of football, and Italy's brand of football has remained throughout the years. And I think the coaches and the players it spawns is very similar to that. And so, yeah, Marco Donadel is one of those coaches that likes to be involved in everything. And I think that that's only going to become more evident with how the team plays, how the team acts, and just in every facet of what you see, and I guess what you don't see.
Right. And did you, and now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the event, not necessarily Marco Donadel, but did you find that this event organized by CF Montreal as a benefit for media members? Is this something that you think it should be done maybe more frequently? Like, did you see value in doing this with the media members?
Look, I mean, this is not going to become a weekly thing, right? I'd love it to be a weekly thing where you just sit down and talk tactics for 3 hours. But look, realistically, if this happens once a year, I think that's plenty, right? Because you can't do this on like a monthly basis or like every 2 months, because that's not that's not how tactics work. That's not how they evolve. And B, you know, you you're not going to go in there for like a half hour meet, right? You want to have some meat to like dissect for a whole year's worth. We had a whole year's worth of, or not a whole year, right? We had what, 3/4 of a season's worth of tactics to talk about, and ideas and thoughts and questions. So yeah, it's not going to become a regular thing, but I think if they do it at least once a year, I think that's a great initiative.
Yeah, I also think that that's important because that way, Elias, if you and I are know that there's going to be that yearly meeting at the end of the year where we're not talking about the post-mortem where we're talking about what happened to it, but really to get to sit down with the coach and really dissect and ask him directly, because on this
Yeah.
show we'll dissect his tactics. We'll see what we see on the field and on TV, but we really don't get a chance. But if we get a chance to sit down with whatever head coach is there, not just Marco Danella, any coach that is there, I think it makes the press conferences throughout the year also a little bit better for them, for the coach too, instead of asking random questions and them going off on a tandem of tactics that doesn't necessarily make sense for everybody. So I think it's important to make it easier for the year. And again, I'm not sure, I don't follow every MLS team in the league, but I find this initiative fantastic. I love that they gave that freedom, relaxed, and I think it was also an opportunity for Marco Donadel to practice his new French that he just learned from I believe he was in Bologna. I don't know where he was, but
He was in Holland, actually, of all places.
yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. So it allowed him probably to practice a little bit more. But no, I think it's a fantastic event. Now, just to kind of finish it off here, is there anything that you felt maybe the club, or maybe Marco could have done more to take it to make it more of a valuable experience, or do you think it was
It was 3 hours. I think
yeah
if anything we overdid it, right? This was pitched as like like an hour and a half meeting where you kind of get to pick his brain, and it just didn't stop, right?
yeah
And so yeah, I mean, you have Hassan Kamara there who's in the room as well. I mean, this is a professional soccer player for forever, and deeply entrenched in Montreal soccer culture. So he was also there, and it was also great to have him talking about it too. But I mean, like, this is if it's the exact same thing next year, and I'm totally happy.
yeah, and for football lovers like ourselves and the fans, this is absolutely a gift to be able to sit down with the coach and seriously ask him, like, what were you thinking in this formation, or what is, give us a little bit of a sneak peek into your head as to what are your thoughts when you see all
Yeah,
this, right?
exactly.
So fantastic event, and we encourage, we hope that CF Montreal continues doing it, because honestly, it was a fantastic experience for everybody involved. All right, so we're gonna move on to the signings, to the
Yeah,
surprise signings. I don't know, I can't believe I'm saying this on December 15th,
I know,
but
right? What a world we live in.
Jesus. So CF Montreal announced a few signings this week. Last Wednesday, the team announced the addition of defender, and I don't want to mess up his name, Degurdan Torhalsen from Orlando City. Did I say that right? I hope it gets
I feel
better
like
as
you
we
got
go
it. I
through.
feel like you got it.
Yeah. In return, there's been harder names that I've had to say. In return, the club has traded 500,000 in 2026 GAM and a conditional 125,000 in 2027 GAM. Torhalsen has since been signed by the club to a contract extension through the end of 2027-2028 campaign, with team option included for the following season. An additional stipulation of the trade seeks Orlando City retain a sell-on percentage. So
That's not surprising at all, right?
let's talk about this. So what was this? Do you think this was a necessary signature for CF Montreal?
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? This is a very versatile fullback who can also play in the midfield if need be. He's fantastic going forward. He excels in not just, in that final ball that we were talking about, in that final piece of the attack. And so having a fullback that's capable of doing this is super important. And Marco Donadel kind of stressed the need for fullbacks that can kind of do it on their own, right? That can carry the attack on the flank on their own. Because look, when Ivan Jaime is cutting in towards the middle, or whichever, if they bring in another player for that left hand side, Fabian Herbers was another player who wasn't really an out wide player, out and out, touchline player. He cut into the middle. He liked to play in the half spaces. You need a fullback that can kind of carry the offensive load, especially in 1v1 situations. Because if you're going to have someone like Ivan Jaime cutting to the half spaces, it's going to draw a lot of attention. That's going to draw, at least one or two players, and that means that you need a fullback that could score and that can assist. And again, Luca Petrasso did a very good job last season, right? If you go back to the postmortem, it was one of the highest rated players in our postmortem, and the fans agreed, right? He was also one of the highest rated players in the fan survey
By
at the end of the
Hattie as
season.
well. Hattie's favorite player of the year.
And again, right, he's a workhorse, and he did a fantastic job, but he was limited in one-on-one situations, right?
Skills, in
He
terms
read
of
the
skills,
space
yeah.
well, and he was able to hop on to the situations, and he even scored a goal, right? But you need someone that can create, take people on 1v1, and Torhalsen is someone who is much more equipped for that kind of play. Because whenever Luca Petrasso was left on an island 1v1 and Jaime or Herbert or even Clark kind of drifted towards the inside of the field, all of a sudden he got the ball out wide. It was either try and cross it or pass back, right? The combination wasn't really there. And again, that might also be a chemistry thing, right? We saw that Petrasso and Jaime didn't really vibe that much on the field, right? They kept on, they were trying to do two different things. So maybe, and we talked about it, right? A more modern fullback. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is a more modern fullback that can do what Marco Donadel wants from his wide player. So you're not going to have an out-and-out winger. You're going to have an out-and-out fullback instead that can, be an offensive threat out wide all the time.
Yeah, I absolutely thought this was a necessary signature, because I mean, you broke it down really well, right? What he does, but he is that natural fullback that can also help out offensively, which is something that I think, in my opinion, Marco Donadel's scheme is probably the most important position, the fullback. I believe that
Yeah, it's vital.
He demands a lot from them offensively and defensively, and also to have an incredible work rate. Now, when you look at his time at Orlando City, it also seems like he was, especially towards the last season, he was more of a backup, which is something that also maybe brings it into, when you think about it a little bit today, as it stands right now, there are three players that plays his position, right? There's David Bugay, Bodi Hidalgo, and now him, right? So it's kind of, I don't think we're gonna go, in my opinion, Elias, I don't think we're gonna go into 2026 with three fullbacks on the right.
Yeah, but the thing is, and here's why I was talking about out left, because Marco Nadal doesn't, he was talking about how he'd like to be able to have a right-footed left back.
Okay.
Right. Which in the build-out play is a little bit complicated, but in the final third, the advantages are enormous.
Yeah.
Because you have someone that can now cut onto their strong foot. You could have someone that's almost at a mismatch with the other team's right back. So again, we have no idea where he's going to play. But I saw this and I saw, right-footed, a third right back. I kind of thought maybe this is a guy playing out left on his off foot, because there is precedent for it, elsewhere in the world, and it's not a completely uncommon thing. But I'm very curious to see, because again, his take on, like, he's elite one, like, as far as fullbacks go, he's elite 1v1, and he's great at getting into the penalty area and getting into dangerous spaces. So again, there's only so much percentages you can look at, and he's a 98th percentile for non-penalty xG. What, I don't give a shit. But now can you create danger, and he's a player that can.
You know what? Like, when I first saw his name pop up, I actually remembered it, Elias. I think it was this season, a game that he played against CF Montreal in Montreal, where he missed a wide open shot.
I remember that. Yeah.
Do you remember that? And I was like, and I think Orlando won. It was winning 3-0. I forgot, but I remember him, and I was like, oh my God, we're so lucky he sucks offensively. That's what I was thinking. And now he joined us. But anyways, that's not here nor there. But I do remember him from that time. But I think what I want to know is your thoughts on it. Do you think he's an upgrade?
He scored against Montreal.
Oh, he did that same game.
He scored against Montreal.
Of course, we would get somebody that scored against Montreal.
He scored against Montreal twice in his career, actually.
Fantastic. So, do you think he's an upgrade in the position?
It's too early to tell. I think that he's an upgrade because, again, right, Luca Petras, this is assuming he's playing on the left, because David Bugay and Bodi Hidalgo is extremely tough duo to break into. Adding a third one is very, very tough, competition-wise and carving out minutes-wise. But Luca Petrasso wasn't exactly a stud in 1v1 defending either. Remember, right? How many times he was caught on an island with a 1v1 specialist, and he suffered, man.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not going to say this is an upgrade, because we have to watch him. And it's not clearly like, oh my God, this is like, oh my God, you signed Kai Wagner, but this is definitely a very interesting new player that I think will bring a lot of stuff that Luca Petrasso can't do.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's an upgrade, but he's a necessary player that,
100%.
like you said, he's very, very versatile. Like, he's not going to stay in one position, and he can play multiple positions, but he's not going to be your game changer. Now, this is like, when I'm talking about this, Elias, it sounds like I'm talking about Luca Petrasso. Literally, I am describing Luca Petrasso by saying these things. So, but is he an upgrade to Luca Petrasso? That's the hard part. Now, when we talk about him being maybe not an upgrade, the same or whatnot, the amount that I mentioned earlier that the team paid, $500,000 in GAM for 2026 and 125, a conditional 125 for 2027. Do you think that the team paid a value, like a just value for this kind of player? Was it too much?
It cost them the third overall draft pick. They sold the draft pick for $500,000 for what? $400,000 in GAM. So if we're playing with Monopoly money here, they basically spent $100,000 on this guy, right? So from the GAM perspective, yeah, $500,000 in GAM when you just got $400,000 for a draft pick. When was the last time you reliably used one of your draft picks?
Mhm.
I can't remember the last draft pick that, was consistently a part of this team. So yeah, why not? Screw it,
Yeah.
I think that's great bang for your buck. That's fantastic bang for your buck.
And the last defender we brought on from Orlando, do you remember who it was?
Come on, Miller.
Kamal Miller, and he played a similar person. Not gonna, I'm not saying he's no Kamal Miller because he might be very far from that, but it's just a little bit of history there for you. Starter or backup?
Right now, I'm gonna go starter.
Hmm.
If this is really a player brought in
We
to
start
play,
tomorrow.
if this really is a player brought in to be a right-footed player at left back, I think he starts tomorrow.
It's tough for me to say because I think they're gonna see who contributes more offensively, right? As you mentioned, Petrasso sometimes he could be fantastic, while other times defensively he was horrendous. I have to see how good or bad or how much he contributes on each end, the Gore, because
Mhm.
you don't want a fullback. Like I said, I think Marco Donadel's scheme demands so much of his fullbacks that they have to do what we spent most of the season when we talked about David Bugayo, we talked about Luca Petrasso. We always talked about, like, are they doing their job? Are they doing less than their job, or are they doing
Yeah.
more than their job? David Bugayo, a lot of the games spent doing a lot more than his job, and we praised him a lot in this podcast. But at the end of the day, that's what you want from the Gore. Is he going to just do his job? Is he going to do less than his job, or is he going to be doing more than his job? So you want a player that is impactful, but not too impactful, because too impactful can also mean that you're leaving a certain space behind you, or certain things vulnerable. So it's going to be interesting. I find it a very interesting signature. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be the kind of signature that takes this team to the next level, but it's a necessary signature. And it's not the sexiest name that you'll see, come at the beginning of the
I
season
don't
where
know.
everybody's going to be
Torhausen's a
buying.
pretty sexy name. That's a cool name, man.
Elias, not everything I say is literal, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
but anyway, it's like I love it. But
It's a
no,
cool
it's
name, man. Tell me that's not a cool ass name.
it just, they're gonna need from here to February or March, whenever it is, that they're gonna need to sign the name
Yeah.
that is going to fill seats, because as we're gonna talk about it later, FC Super is doing their shit, and we're gonna get to that, right? And we need to bring seats back into Stats Apuro. So okay, we're gonna, before we move on, I just have one last question. Okay, so what do you think this signature means for David Bugay, Bori Hidalgo, or Luca Petrasso? Do you think it means anything, this signature?
It means you better start getting better offensively or you will be replaced.
Okay, you know what I think it means, Elias? I think that means Bugay is no longer with CF Montreal in 2026. I think he
That'd be
will
a
be sent
terrible
off to
idea.
Europe. It's a terrible idea, but I think it will be
I
done. They
think
will.
they better get paid. That'd be a terrible idea.
I think they're
He's
setting
20. He's
themselves
what,
up.
23? He has all makings of being an elite MLS right back. If he leaves, it better be millions. I mean, millions.
I
That's
think I think they're really, really going to push for it. I don't. I think they're really setting themselves up
I'd be very
to
surprised
not
and very
having
disappointed.
back, or maybe in the summer. We don't know. But next, we're going to move on to the next signature, right? So later that same day, Elias, the club announced the addition of another defender, Brian Vera from Real Salt Lake. In return, the club has traded 700,000 in 2026 GAM, 500,000 in 2027 GAM, and a conditional 350K in additional GAM. Vera has since been signed by the club to a contract extension through the end of 2027-2028 campaign, with a team option included for each of the following two seasons. Again, I'm going to ask you very similar questions to what I asked you for the Gurdan Torhelsen. Was this a necessary signature, in your opinion?
Well, we knew that they needed center back depth, right? This is not news. Fernando Alvarez is gone, and he ate up a good chunk of minutes. And Brendan Craig, as reliable as he was not expected to play that many minutes, where he played a bunch. And so, you know, I think it absolutely is necessary because you're bringing in a very technical and savvy center back going forward. Um, I would like to know, what the scouting report is on him defensively speaking, because all these stats that we see, we see um how good he is from set pieces and how he's a shooting threat from distance, which again, I miss Gabriele Corbo so much, and those 40-yard bombs I used to take out like once a game. I used to like, oh shit. So if Brian Vera pulls up and he pulls up from 40 meters and says, you know, have at it and go for it. I love it. I love me a good shot from distance. But this is more, you had Efrain Morales, who was tricky defensively because he was often caught out. You had Jalen Neal, who, with the ball at his feet is untouchable, but defensively in terms of marking space was a bit complicated. And now you have Brian Vera, who is again much more offensively geared. So is this a player that can also kind of double as a left back in a pinch? Maybe, but this is a center back, and this is a very offensive center back. So I'm wondering what kind of um, what the thought process is here, and I'd love to see how he adapts to a very different system than what they had in Salt Lake City. So I'm very intrigued by this. Obviously, like his highlight tape looks fantastic because of just the sheer amount of goals from distance and the free kicks and all that stuff. But I'd love to see when it gets to the nitty gritty of such a demanding system,
Yeah.
how he copes. Because again, this is the thing with Donadello's system. It's not technically demanding. It's the focus. You
Yeah.
cannot switch off for half a second or else you concede a goal. That's the thing, right? So it's tough for new players to learn, and I'd love to see how he copes with it.
I think I know you said it a little bit earlier, but this feels like a very Kamal Miller signature.
This is Kamal Miller. Forget
Yeah,
Torkelson, right? This is
literally.
Kamal Miller.
This is Kamal Miller. And you know why, Elias, right? It's because it feels like Real Salt Lake might have been using him in the wrong position. This is something that the team saw. And they might, and because of that natural tendency to have played center back, he'll bring
Mhm.
that defensive approach to the fullback position, while also, like, as you mentioned, being very capable to distribute
Yeah.
offensively by the long shots. Which, again, if he is being envisioned more as a fullback, he will absolutely be a workhorse under Marco Donadel, because again, he's known for his work rate. Now, I asked you the same question earlier. With the numbers I mentioned a little bit earlier, I know you mentioned it was monopoly money, but did the team pay just value for this kind of player too much, or was it a bargain?
No, I think this is fair. It's a bit high, but I don't think it's completely ridiculous. I think that he's um I think that he's going to bring in a good punch, and he's not the biggest guy. I think he's like 6 feet or just barely. Um, and so I think it's a different kind of player, and I think that there's no such thing as too many center backs, right? You have Jalen Neal and Efrain Morales, who I think are your starting. Starting tomorrow, I think that's the starting duo. But Brian Vera is a very interesting thing to have either off the bench or to bring in some competition or to give you a different look because he's a very different profile from the other two.
I think what also, and I agree with you in that sense, that I think it's just the money.
Yeah.
Some might view it
They still
again
need a
after
vet though. They still
if
need a veteran, man. Everyone
if
here's
after
too damn young.
three games he gives up a lot. Like he doesn't he has poor performances right away. The narrative is going to come out that
Yeah,
we've
of
paid too
course.
much for him, as is going on right now in Celtic with Wilfred Nancy after 3 games. But
We're not gonna get it. Not gonna get it.
dude, have you seen the comments? These
Yeah, but
fans are
again, this is
harsh.
look. They lost 3 games in a row, and it's a team that's used to winning the league.
But it is
I'm
harsh,
not.
Elias.
Oh
My
yeah, I'm not
God.
surprised. I'm not surprised.
Anyways, we're
Again,
not talking
there's
about that, but
we're not
three
gonna get into
games.
it. We're not gonna get into it.
It gets me so angry. Anyways, so I do think one thing that I did find interesting is that he's 26 years old. He's
Mhm.
turning 27 in January. He
Yeah,
is going to be the oldest player in the defense.
yeah.
Because that the Gore is
They
25.
need a veteran, man.
Yeah. If they can, what I find the interesting from the two signatures that we just mentioned is that these are players that I would consider, Elias, that they're in their prime, that they're not there. For example, in this signature for Brian Vera, there is no sell-on clause to be sold after. That's because that's a
Yep.
player that's in his prime. He's not the Real Salt Lake when they sold him. They didn't think that he had maybe a value to go to Europe later on. Now they didn't say. It also mentions that they did do a new negotiation, a new contract extension. We don't know if that includes maybe with him being sold off later on to another team. But the point is, I think these are two players. The differing from past seasons is that these are two players that are in their prime, and they're not players that are later on in their career about to retire, or they're not players either that are, that are maybe going to develop into something like Efrain Morales or Jalen Neal or David Bugay, that they always signed such young defenders that have potential to become great, like a George Campbell. But it takes time, Elias. It takes so much time for a defender to, develop that defensive instinct and adapt to the MLS and the physicality and the way it's played so wide, So now you're getting players that have MLS experience, but also are in their prime of their career. So that's very significant. It means, like, I think with these signatures, the team is kind of sending a message, Elias. We did say this in the post-mortem. We said every signature, once this team declared a rebuild, every signature moving forward is defining exactly what a rebuild means to this team and what they mean by a rebuild. What are we supposed to consider a rebuild? Is it that they're going to go back to, spending a bunch of money to young players, to young players to develop, or is it going to mean that they're going to play, sign big name players later that are about to retire? I really wanted to know, and I think with this kind of signature, they're kind of sending a message as to what the rebuild is going to look like. Is this an upgrade to the position? And we're talking maybe left back or center back. Do you consider this an upgrade?
Not necessarily an upgrade. I think in terms of depth, it absolutely is, but in terms of individual, no.
What do you mean by that? Expand on that.
Like, I don't think they upgraded on Jalen Neal or Efrain Morales, but I think this is a huge upgrade to the depth of the defense.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's an upgrade, but it's a necessary signature similar to he has some red flags from the past, which make me exactly think like, are we really getting a better player, or is it going to be, another case where we're going to have to give him some time to really, get his stuff together?
Yeah.
So we'll see. But starting in the season, do you see him as a starter or a backup?
I can't say him and Torelson are starters, and I said Torelson's a starter. So I'm going with no, he's not a starter.
Damn, Elias, with that kind of money, I don't know. I see him as a starter.
Here's the thing, right? If you want to be taken seriously as a club, you need to have a good bench as well, right? Take a look at what they're paying Prince Owusu, and Prince Owusu was supposed to be coming off the bench last season, right? Having someone you paid $700,000 for come off the bench is not a bad thing. It just means you have to have even better players on the field. That should be the standard that's being set here, right? It's not an issue of, oh, this is wasted money. It's that, oh, I have the confidence that the depth is good because we've invested in it properly. It's not just, on a wing and a prayer. And yeah, your depth pieces, like, there were people that were supposed to be depth pieces, like Brendan Craig and Luca Petrasso and Dante Sealy and Prince Owusu, that ended up having to be starters because of injuries and stuff. Yeah, they turned out great. But imagine if you had people at their level or above their level, and then you had people like that coming off the bench. That'd be fantastic. That's what competitive teams do. That's what competitive teams are. It's not just, I'm buying a player, you have to become a starter. No, you have to buy depth as well. That's what Brian Vera is. That may also be what Torelson is. But you have to invest in your bench as well. You can't just invest in your starting 11 because that's how you get killed when you play 10 games in a month.
Right. No, I get that. And if you're Vancouver Whitecaps, right, because they were the runner-ups, I'm not going to talk about Inter Miami because apparently Inter Miami has their own budget that nobody talks about, but a Vancouver Whitecaps team, do you think they do this kind of signature as a backup in their squad?
Their back line is stacked. So yeah, I think they do.
All right. I mean, think
they would have to have a pretty serious exodus, a pretty significant player leaving. I don't think they would do it right now because, again, they don't have to. But this is the kind of player that if you bring him on and he's a bench player, I'm not too surprised, but you have to use him properly as well, right? Just because you have $700,000 on the bench doesn't mean that you never use him. He still has to be properly utilized, and I think that's what I'm going to be judging more than the fact that he is on the bench.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see again. After a few games, we're either gonna say they spend too much money, or if he has terrible performances, or you know if he has fantastic performances, we'll say this is a bargain. Um, but it's something that I did talk about it a little bit earlier, because this player did have a few suspensions in the past because of some violent behaviors. I didn't really look into the details, but I do know he kind of has a rep that holds on him. Is this something that kind of worries you when a player is coming in with a past like that? Because if you guys remember from Houston, when Romel Kyoto signed with CF Montreal, we all know how that experiment ended up here. I would consider him a success with his time at CF Montreal, regardless of how it ended in Miami Beach. But he came with a rep from the Houston Dynamo as also being a troublesome player and having some issues in the locker, but also on the field, getting suspended a few times. Um, do you Is this something that worries you, or do you think that maybe it's just something about changing environments that could maybe help out the player, and you would want to be patient with that?
I mean, I'm looking at his career stats here, and honestly, 36. He's averaging a yellow card every 270 minutes, which is roughly every 3.5 games. Not too bad. He's got one red card in his career, but it's what you do with those cards, right?
Yeah.
It's if you're overly aggressive, you're throwing yourself into fouls, and you're putting your team in bad positions that may not necessarily show up on the score sheet. We talked about this with Joel Waterman. I love me a defender with a bit of an edge. That's plays with his heart on his sleeve. Again, you don't do it to the detriment of the team, right? So if you're suspended, one time because accumulation of yellow cards, or because God forbid you got a red card, but you play with passion and you're not a dickhead, then that's like getting red cards for stupid reasons and stuff like that, where you punch somebody or whatever. Then I'll be annoyed, but like it is what it is. That's football. If you get like 2 or 3 suspensions a season, then like okay, now it's a bit of an issue here. So I guess that kind of depends. But I love me. I love a bad boy.
Yeah. Well,
Can't
it
help
doesn't
it.
seem like you're the only one, because it does look like the club is the more you see their new signatures, you can talk about
Mhm.
Henadi Hitsinchuk, Ivan Jaime, some of the some of the new players that have joined the club, they come in with an edge. They're not shy to confront. They have character, and I think that also comes out from Marco Donadel, where you can tell, even in all the press conferences that we've been analyzed,
Yeah.
there's been some hot-headed moments where he's not been afraid to,
He's not exactly the coolest cat in the world either. You are
yeah.
100% right.
So if you maybe ask him a question that he's not too happy
Absolutely.
about, he'll let you know. And he probably is the same way as a player. I mean, the team has allowed us to see some videos in the locker room, and
Mhm.
he's the same player. He's the same guy that we see in the press conference with his
Yeah.
players, right? He's very cares. So again, maybe that's the kind of player that Marco Donadel prefers. But we're just gonna finish off the CF Montreal topic with one last little thing that came in today, Elias, because usually Elias at the
For the
ball is
first
round.
time ever,
Elias, our luck at the ball is round for forever has been that we do the
you're
show,
witnessing balls around history right now.
and within the next few days, it's like news, news, news. Like, dude, really? I had nothing on Sunday. Now you give me everything. So today, Tom Bogert dropped a bomb on us, saying that Colorado Rapids are finalizing a deal to acquire winger Dante Seeley from CF Montreal, per sources. The deal is worth around 2 million GAM. Elias, what the? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts when you see that?
2 million. Max Truman is reporting that it's 2.5. 2.5. You're kind of in the same ballpark here, but that's huge, man.
Huge.
First of all, I think that's an overpay. 'Cause
100%.
again, you're doing like again. I'm not saying Dante Seeley is not worth it. I'm saying you're doing this based on literally 1 year of professional soccer,
Mhm.
right? Dante Sealy in the last season proved that he is absolutely worth it. But he also proved that he can be consistent. He also proved that he gets tunnel vision. So, the last month, right, was a Caden Clark 2024 level month. Let's be honest here. He was unreal. He was unplayable. And that's the thing. When he's in the mood, he is as tough to mark as almost anybody in the league. When he's feeling himself and he's getting into his spot and he's getting his shots off, that's great. But there's also the other side of the coin where he tries too much and it doesn't come off. He doesn't have the experience to kind of let the game come to him at times. And again, this is also due to the fact that this was he said it, right? And it's a good reason. It's his first full professional season. This is an entirely different world, not just level of soccer, but just, how you carry yourself, what you do on a day-to-day basis, what's expected of you, what you expect from your team, everything, right? So I think that honestly, I would have loved for Montreal to keep him for another year, because I personally said I think Hennady Sinchuk should end up being the starter on that side, and not having someone like Dante Sealy come off the bench is fantastic. But by that metric, if you're getting $2.5 million GAM for a bench player, then you fucking take that shit.
Hell yeah.
So again, I'm disappointed because I love Dante Sealy. I thought he was a really fun, exciting player. And I think you always need that kind of spark plug, that kind of wild card on your team, especially if it's an attacker. But I think he's going to do good stuff. I think he's going to do really good stuff. I think that, he's proven now that if you give him the confidence and you give him the space to do his thing, you're going to get results. But I do hope that they exercise patience with him in Colorado, because if you put him in there, you go like, okay, you did 9 goals in half a season, so I want 20 now. Like, fucking slow down,
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't necessarily ask him to immediately replicate everything, because he is 22 and is only in year 2 professionally. But I think I'm worried that Montreal may have let him go a bit too early. And I think that's why if Colorado made them an offer they can't refuse, which is that $2.5 million, you take it. I don't care, right? Yeah. But my heart hurts a little bit, man.
It's personal to me. But look, guys.
Yeah. One of the only high points of the season last year, and he's gone. Right? That's what hurts. That's really what hurts.
We talked about this with Bryce Duke. It's not personal, okay? There's just
entirely different fucking universes here. This is like if they sold Caden Clark last winter.
Yeah,
it's like if they cashed on Caden Clark right away.
Yeah.
I'd be like, but we just got him. But
Yeah, but no, I think it's the latter. I think it really is that.
Yeah,
they made it. I mean, if I'm Montreal, honestly, let's just be honest. If I'm Lucas Saputo, whoever's making that decision, whoever's receiving that offer, and I see this for Dante Sealy, to me, this means that Colorado really is banking on those last few months where he actually. But if you follow CF Montreal and you watch other games and you watched everything that happened leading up to those games, you have to understand, as great as Dante Sealy was, he scored some bangers for the free kicks. And absolutely 100%, I agree with that. But what led to those free kicks that he did? There were some really good build-up play by some really good players that did that. I think it was Sinchuk it was twice Ogier Escobar that picked up the foul near the box. And Ogier Escobar is a kid with a lot of hype and a lot of potential for this team. But Dante Sealy kind of capitalized on the new signatures that the team did, and the declaration of the rebuild, where again players were a lot more looser. There was really nothing more, they were playing with nothing to lose. And I just, again, to me, if I received this offer, that email on the Monday morning by Colorado Rapids, I'm saying, let's go. Where do I sign? Because I'm not thinking twice about it. Because yes,
you spend $2.5 million, you're buying a starter here, right? This is not a debate anymore. Oh, is it a starter? Is it a bench player? No, he's expected to play 30 games and get 20 goal contributions. Right?
Yeah, and if I'm a Colorado Rapids fan and I see these kind of numbers and they're bringing in a winger, a 23-year-old winger into the team, like as you mentioned, I'm expecting Kevin Cabral, the same expectation that Kevin Cabral had when he signed with the Colorado Rapids. I think he was a DP. I don't think Dante Sealy will be a DP, but
that kind of player. But
that kind of player, you expect a lot of production. I don't think they're expecting that kind of money to be spent on a backup winger at the Colorado Rapids, right? So
but the best news, that's pure profit. He's brand for
Yeah.
$0, right? That is
Dude, he came in
pure
as a
profit.
trialist. Nobody knew
Yeah.
who the hell he was. He came in as a wingback because he played
So
with
nudge,
wingback.
nudge, wink, wink. The people responsible for bringing Dante Sealy in, who may or may not be at the club right now, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Fantastic job,
Yeah.
right? Because you've identified talent like this, and you've just made the club 2.5 million in GAM, which again, I mean, they spent 1.2 of it, right? So they've made 3 million GAM. Assuming this is 2.5, and not 2 or whatever, that and the draft pick, they're at almost 3 million GAM, and they spent 1.2 of it already. So
Yeah.
they still have, again, this isn't, we're not talking existing reserves, just in terms of money made and spent in the last 2 weeks, last week, they still have 1.7 GAM to spend, $1 million in GAM to spend. I'd like to see them, throw the weight around.
This is
You
when it
have to
gets
throw.
so
You have so you
interesting.
can't hoard GAM. You can't be Scrooge McDuck here. Spend your GAM.
Yeah. 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 No, it's about to get super, super interesting. And honestly, I hope they spend it on Christian Benteke. Anyways, I'm not so dude,
I
I
don't
want,
know,
but by
man.
all
I
means,
don't know, man. I don't vibe with that move. I don't.
why, dude? He's a proven scorer in the
He's
league.
36.
Dude,
You want him. Look at me with in the eyes. You're telling me he's going to do the pressing that Prince Owusu's pressing?
he doesn't need to. He
Yes, he
doesn't
does.
need to. Just get him in the
Have you
box,
seen Marco
cross him all
Donadell's system?
day.
Have you seen what Marco Donadell wants from his attackers? The running, the physical requirements. This is
He
not
won't do
DC
that.
United, where you
No, he
haram
won't do
ball and then you chuck it up to him and you hope for the best.
that.
Right? He's going to be expected to be involved in the play. He's not. Prince
But what
Owusu
if
does
you get him
not
as
just
a
wait in the box
backup?
for the ball.
What if you get him as a backup late in the games, in heavy
I would love
weeks,
that. Do you really think you're going to be able to afford Christian Benteke and only use him as a sub?
and with the
And
promise
you're
of
gonna
playing a
you're
lot?
gonna
Yeah.
sell him on this because you also have, like, again, this is all great tactically. You also have to convince Christian Benteke, the person, to come to Montreal, who finished third to last season, take a significant, like a monstrous pay cut, 36, and play
Yeah.
20 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He's
No,
got. Are you outside
I
of
would
your
love to have
mind?
him, Prince Owusu and Benteke on top, with Prince Owusu doing the pressing, and let Benteke kind of wait for it to be off.
But
Anyways,
that's
that's a
the thing
dream
with this.
world.
That's the thing with this system. Nobody gets a free ride.
Yeah.
Everyone has to be pressing. The second there's one person that's like allowed to do whatever, it falls apart.
Let me dream. Okay, I want Christian Benteke,
Wake up.
and if he ends up signing, I'll be on this show saying, "I told you so." I wish it's a Santa Claus on our holiday podcast. But look, by all means, we talked a lot about Prince Owusu being a successful,
Yep.
and there's rumors about him going out, but we don't really talk about rumors. We talk about things that are done official. Dante City is a rumor, but when Tom Boger reports, it's coming in a
Usually
few
it's,
days.
yeah.
But we heard about the interest of Prince Owusu, but by all means, most of the trialists, even Brandon Craig, and to a certain extent, and Luca Petrasso, were a success for CF Montreal.
All four, again, I don't consider Prince Owusu a trialist, but technically he was. So if you want to call a spade,
I will
all
forever call him a
four trialists were incredible successes. 10 on 10, full marks.
Yeah.
For what you paid them and what you got out of them. 10 on 10 across the board. Congratulations. Whoever did that, assuming they're still at the club, enormous raise. Enormous raise. You earned
Say
it.
it, Elias. Say it.
Oh, we're not gonna start. It's not a reality TV show. But whoever brought these trialists in, put that shit on your CV.
Great job. Yeah, the scouting department, because I know they have a scouting department MLS. Whoever's making these decisions,
Put that shit on your CV right now.
and the conversation that was done with the agents and the player to convince them to come in as trialists and give themselves a second chance with CF Montreal to maybe increase their value to eventually be sold to the Bundesliga or another MLS team just by having more minutes than they would have with any other MLS team. I'm convinced that even Fabian Herbers, not necessarily that he would have been like signed off for a big chunk, but he would have definitely been a big part of this team had he not gotten injured. I'm convinced
Yeah,
of that.
of
I
course.
think
Of course.
he is the kind of player that Marco Donadel wants to have 11 of. Mathieu, what we used to say about Mathieu Chouanière when he was with CF Montreal, he was the kind of player that you want to have 11 of him on the field because they do their jobs, Elias. They do their job the right way, and you can't necessarily expect them to do more or less, but they'll do it over and over again, just like
Yeah.
Prince Uwosu did his job over and over again. And eventually success comes from that. But we've talked about extensively about CF Montreal, um, but we have other topics to talk about. So thank
We
you guys so
do.
much for hanging in. And just before we go on to our next topic, I'm just going to do a quick word from our sponsor. Hello, the Ball is Rounders. This show is sponsored by AR Design. I can tell you that in my case, as you can see in my background, I need some change. This is why I reached out to, my wife reached out to Allison from AR Designs to bring some change in my space. You can't see it now, but over the next few weeks, this room is about to get a little funky with the way it looks. I thought Allison will come to my place and turn the place upside down right away. But before changing anything, she made sure to really understand what my vision was for our place and what budget we were working for. And based on that, she gave us some advice and some ideas as to what our place could look like in the future. And that's when we knew that we had reached out to the right person. Like a soccer team working together for the perfect goal, AR Interior Design coordinates every detail of your interior design project, so your home comes together beautifully. From concept to final touches, Allison makes sure every element works in harmony. Visit ardesign.ca today to see her latest interior design project, or follow the links that you see below me on her Instagram, email, or the website, or you can just find the links on the YouTube description. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, AR Design. Thank you so much. As you guys can see, still having on the background. We're working on that. But yeah, thank you so much to AR Design and to Allison from AR Design. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our next topic. Okay, now FC Supra du Québec announced their first official player signings in the name with the local trio David Chouanière, Loic Quemi, and Sean Rea. David Chouanière, 28 years old. I want to call him a midfielder. Loic Quemi as well, an attacker. And Sean Rea, as most of us know him from his time with CF Montreal. FC Super has delivered what they promised with these early signings when they said they would get players from Montreal that spend most of their soccer career in Montreal. What are your thoughts when you saw this, Elias? I mean, look, these are the first three players. There's plenty of rumors going left and right, but these are officially signed. What were your thoughts when you saw these three names that popped up?
Good. You know, this is, I'm not jumping out of my seat, but these are three players you absolutely had to get. These are three CPL level players, proven players that have found success. You talk about Sean Rea, who won the under 21 Canadian Player of the Year in the CPL. You talk about David Chouanière, who's won God knows how many titles with Forge. You talk about Loic Quemi, who was the best player in League Two, who was the best player in League One, who played CPL, didn't really feel like continuing, came back, and then got his club La Salle promoted to League One last year, who is he is an institution when it comes to Quebec soccer, when it comes to Montreal soccer. All three of these guys, you had to get them, right? Loic Quemi was a foregone conclusion. I think that the second the CPL was announced in Montreal, everyone goes, so when are you announcing him, right? You know, there is a very Saint Laurent flavor about this club. He was their leading goal scorer. He carried them to the Canadian Championship, obviously. And so him being there is not even a little bit surprising. David Chouanière and Sean Rea are two players that, you know, if mismanaged, you could have fallen through the cracks. You could have not ended up getting. But I like that this is a statement right away. You go out there, you get them. There's no doubt. But now you have to keep on growing, right? You have to keep on going out there, getting more Quebec talent. I'm not just talking about bringing up League One Quebec talent and kind of going from there. You also have to go out there and sign CPL level players. You have to go and sign some real heavyweight Quebec players. If you really want to make this a successful project, from the start, it has to be a statement of intent. You can't be like, we'll be shit the first year and then we'll try and get some more Quebec players. No, you have to assemble the Quebecois Avengers. right? Les Avengers. So you have to go out there and really make, like I said, a statement of intent. I think these three players now is an excellent first step. So I'm very excited to see, to break down, who else is going to be on this roster, who else should be on this roster, and in the new year, we're definitely going to be talking about that a whole lot more.
Yeah, there's from our understanding, Elias, from now to the holidays, there will be more signatures. Obviously, that's all we have for now. But look, let me kind of break it down, okay? Because I was actually present in the player announcement. Thank you so much to the FC Super Quebec team and staff that invited the ball is around, and I was able to go there and talk to David Chonier and talk to Loic Quemi. Well, I didn't really get to talk to Loic, but because it was kind of honestly, I got there really late because of the snowstorm. It was a terrible
Uh-huh.
snowstorm. My bus was late by like 30 minutes. Anyways,
Fine.
not gonna go there. Showed up late, angry. But I'm a the way they kind of presented Loic Quemi to the press was he didn't get a fair chance in the CPL. They didn't feel that he got a fair chance, but that they wanted to give him a second opportunity to really show that he deserves to be in the CPL and that
And
he
they're
can be an
right.
impactful player. And yes, ça tombe bien that he's from that they know each other from the Saint Laurent times, the Saint Laurent times, and they have a good rapport. I think it benefits both parties. Loic Comi will have his second chance and will be able to showcase his skills with the CPL level while doing it at home with people he knows, with a coach he knows, with a general manager he knows as well. So I think it's going to be big for his confidence in the league and eventually maybe move on to bigger things. Um, David Chouaniai, absolute fan because I spoke to him several times throughout the same event and he always said the same message. He's like, I'm very, very proud of this team, very proud. And I really do believe that the CPL right now has no idea what's coming their way with FC Super. And to me, the way he speaks, Elias, he sounds like he's going to be wearing the captain's armband come April
I wouldn't
because
be surprised. I would not be
he's
surprised.
he's speaking the same language that is being spoken from the top, in the sense that people from here, a team from here for the people here. These are names that are David Chouanier is the kind of name that is going to bring seats, people to the stadium because of that passion that he speaks with, and that almost like the Samuel Piet for CF Montreal, where he
Yeah,
speaks their language and he speaks that with that passion that people love, right? Um,
yeah. He's got the
but
name recognition too.
you do have to kind of question a little bit like what happened in Forge, because it does look like, if Forge is a well-known team in the CPL that has constantly performed and has won many championships. And I mentioned this to David. I asked him, you've known success with Forge FC, including against CF Montreal. Like, what do you bring? What is it that you're going to bring to FC
Yeah,
Supra? And he said, well, look, I'm gonna teach the new ones what it's like, to be a professional, what you do every day, and all that. So he's almost going to be a player coach with the coaches as well to kind of teach them a little bit. Now, the big question mark to me, Elias, is Sean Rea. First of all, he wasn't present at this event, and they said that he was off in vacation, which is fair. They deserve a vacation.
let
But
the man rest.
it's kind of odd, in my opinion. I was like, okay, but I mean, anyways, I'm not gonna go there. But um, I'm a little concerned about this because Sean Rea had trouble in CF Montreal when he was playing there with the coach. Some people can blame it on the coach, but I think at the end of the day, he did kind of get a rep for having a bad attitude when it came to playing. Um, to me, it feels like this is a benefit for CS Saint Laurent, FC Supra, sorry, because it's someone from Quebec, and at the same time, Sean Rea was kind of on and off with the Halifax Wanderers, so it kind of benefits him to have that. I mean, the characteristics that fit of what they're
Mhm.
looking for players. So I'm gonna have to keep a very close eye on Sean Rea because again, one of the things that also seemed to be impacting his game when he was here in Montreal was that he felt a lot of pressure from family members and friends that were in the stands, kind of wanting him to be there in the field all the time. I'm in no way saying, Elias, that he's not skilled, that he's not a good player. I think he's got tremendous talent. We've seen him play with CF Montreal, and he's shown over and over again that he is a very talented player, but it's kind of a little bit more than that. Like I think I don't know how old he is now. Actually, I do
He's
know it
23 now.
is. He's 23 years old, but he needs to act like he's 23 and he's an experienced player that has gone through the CF Montreal Academy, has gone through the MLS, has already gone through the CPL. He can't be coming in with an attitude of I'm here for myself and F everybody else around me. No, you need to become now more of a veteran, a leader, and you need to showcase professionalism from day one so that you can maybe be given a second shot in the pros. So Sean Reyes, the only signing where it's a big question mark for me, Elias, personally. I
I'm
hope
not too
FC's.
I'm not too concerned by that. I think he's much more in his environment, and I think it's just it was a mess in Montreal, right? You have a coach who I don't think man management was his strong suit, right? When you talk about Hernan Losada, and I think that he just never really could get any kind of momentum, which is unfortunate, right? And again, he was given opportunities. I'm not saying he is blameless in this situation, but he understands the CPL much more. And I think that, you know, at Valor, he was kind of the plucky, debutant where he was like, he burst onto the scene. He won U21 Player of the Year, and he was kind of like right away after that, he jumped up to MLS. He didn't really get the chance to kind of continue his momentum. And then he comes back into the CPL. He has half a season, 2 years ago, and then he has a full season here. And again, he just put up the same numbers, but I feel like he just needs to get his feet wet again. I think that now where he's put in this position of leadership and he's put in a position of trust, right? Again, he's one of this is history, right? He is one of the three first players of this club. So I think that you put him in a position of leadership and you put him in a position, again, more importantly, a position of trust. And I think he'll respond better. But again, right, this is a position that he's never been in before, right? At Valor, he was the young guy, the wonder kid. At Montreal, he was the guy that kind of was in the doghouse and never really could prove himself. And at Halifax, he was like, okay, let's see what you can do. And then Halifax was in turn just not that good of a team at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that all that, right? This is not just a blank slate for him, but it's a blank slate where he comes in as uh as again, he's 23, but he is, like you said, more experienced, and he's going to be a leader. He may even be one of the assistant captains. I agree with you. I think David Choignard is probably going to be the captain, but he's going to be one of the leaders in this team. And I, for one, cannot wait to see how he responds to it, because I think that, he's got everything in his bag to be successful and be a very important player on this team.
Yeah, and what I find most interesting about these signatures is that these are three players that, even at 28 years old, they're not settled for CPL. I spoke to David Choignard and I told him, look, you've played in the CPL so long, you've also known the MLS. Like, are you at a stage in your career where you say, you know what, CPL is okay, and I think I'm gonna just kind of play it out here, which a lot of players have done, and there's nothing wrong with that. And he said, no, I'm still hungry to play in the MLS level. I think I can still give a lot in that level. So this is, to me, an opportunity to showcase that I can be more. So I was kind of taken aback by that, Elias. But again, I don't know what their thoughts are, and maybe they do really think that they can perform at that level, and that's fine. And hopefully that's what FC Super becomes, right? It becomes a
Mhm.
stepping stone for a step in the right direction for a lot of these Quebecer players that have been underestimated by other teams, as you mentioned, the Halifax Wanderers or Valor or wherever it is that they spend their time in. Valor, rest in peace. And so wherever it is that they go, that hopefully this can become the team that Quebecers can see as, if I go there, they will not only develop me on the field, but I'll also be developed as a professional where I can come out and truly be, a mature athlete once I hit the club elsewhere. Um, but one of my questions for Mateos, the sporting director, Elias, and I want to kind of hear your thought about that. I asked him, do you find it that it's a little bit difficult to maybe put together your squad right now? Because I know you guys are kind of sticking to you guys said from the get-go that it's going to be Quebecer players and all that.
Mhm.
But there are other players out there that are not necessarily Quebecer that might like this project and that are interested in playing for FC Supra, but they don't fit that criteria. is this something that you guys are maybe running into obstacles, you know? And he responded by saying, well, yes, we are running into those kind of obstacles, but we're going to stick to what we said we will do. And we'd rather, and one of the things that stood out to me, Elias, he said, I'd rather take a less talented player from Quebec because a less talented player from Quebec than a very talented player from elsewhere. Because if we start bringing in foreigners from outside, then we lose our identity, and our identity is something that is a long term for us. So, I mean, speaks from the heart and speaks to a lot of people in Quebec, right? But he also said, I do believe that if the fans are showing up, and maybe we might not be winning, they can understand that this is a Quebec project, right? So they'll be continue showing up knowing that it's Quebecers playing there. What do you think of that, Elias? Do you think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot here? Like, do you think it's a very interesting idea that they have? What is it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's fascinating. I love this idea. We talked about it when they announced the fact that it's only going to be Quebec players or Quebec developed players. I love it. I think this is a super cool, and I think that the Quebec talent to win exists. You now have to be willing to go out there and spend to get it, and commit to developing it. Because again, right, Quebec, we've said it, I don't know how many times we said it, but Quebec is the largest untapped talent pool in the country, and one of the largest untapped talent pools in the continent. So I think that, you go out there and you buy some top Quebec players, and you're like, we're here and we're going to do it. Good job. But now, are you going to, how much are you going to invest to develop the talent, right? Are you going to create an academy? There's the CF Montreal Academy, and all we see from CF Montreal, I mean, yeah, they just recently signed 2 players to the first team, which is fantastic and very deserved. But how many players fall through the cracks and they end up somewhere else? They end up in the CPL. You look at Sergei Kozlovsky, right, who was one of the most highly touted academy products, and who was let go, right? So is there a reason to that? Would he have thrived in a different environment? You have to now set up and invest in an academy, or at least invest in the proper infrastructure to make sure that you can continue this pipeline. Because you can't just keep on banking on, buying up players from Quebec that are elsewhere and bringing them to Supra. You want to also develop them in-house. And so if you're going to do that, you have to put your money where your mouth is. If you want to really become FC Supra du Québec, I'm not talking about just Montreal. You go to Quebec City, you go to Trois-Rivières, you go to all over the place. You go to Gatineau, you go to everywhere, and you start investing in the youth setup. You start developing partnerships, and you start really growing from the ground up. Right? Your sporting director can talk till he's blue in the face about, I'd rather take Quebec players, I'd rather keep the culture. Where do you think the culture comes from? Right? It comes from the spaces where you need investment right now. If you thought it's great now, wait until you put some money into it, because CF Montreal puts money into CF Montreal. Obviously they put money into the partnerships that they have as well, but it's for the goal of improving the club. You really want to do it? You have to expand, and a rising tide lifts all boats. Put it everywhere. And I think that is, I'd love to see them do that, because again, you have to make a covenant with all of Quebec soccer. You made the point to not be Montreal Supra. You are the FC Supra du Québec, right? I don't want to see you just operating in Montreal. I want to see you everywhere.
Yeah.
And you better put up or shut up.
It's nice to speak. It's nice to say, yeah, we're getting talent, but talent in Quebec doesn't just exist in Montreal. It exists everywhere in Quebec. You know what? Honestly, Elias, in Peru, and the national, and this is not a Peru podcast, right? But that's one of the biggest issues in Peru, is that they tend to focus too much seeking talent only in Lima, and it's not because they don't have the money, it's just because priorities, right? And that creates that's just a little problem that I'm telling you, but it creates a much bigger issue in the long run, because there's talent everywhere. You just have to find it and develop correctly. Now, Rocco Placentino also mentioned in this player introduction press conference that they are still in talking with CF Montreal about potentially having some academy kids. Some kids. They didn't say academy kids; they said young kids that are not getting first team minutes. So
Yeah.
that to me speaks a little bit like an Owen Graham Roach, Alexander Guboglu, right? That or maybe the players
Sandro
that
Biello.
or he's not part of CF Montreal anymore. But
I
he
know, but I mean that's a player you could have gone out and gotten on loan,
yes,
right?
in that
Instead
sense,
of
yes,
going to
that's
Halifax.
absolutely. But it's also to me like one of those things that it's
Yeah.
what worries me, Elias. I'll say this is that if you say you bring in a Owen Graham Roach to play for FC Super for the season, um, what attitude does Owen Graham Roach show up to FC Super's team? Does he show up like I don't belong here? Does he show up hungry to showcase his skills, uh, or do they just kind of say this is kind of not going to take this seriously, or CF Montreal gave up on me? Like that's what worries me is how
Look,
CF Montreal prepositions this to hit their academy kids or their young kids their opportunity with FC Supra. That's what concerns me.
for both of those guys, after having played a full season in MLS, after not even played, but just been on an MLS team for a full season, you have to understand what the level is, right? Alexander Guboglu had some good moments. Graham Roche was not able to really, make any headway, despite there really only being one striker that was healthy all season, right? And so you have to understand now that a loan may work out for you. And if you are not receptive to a loan, where you stay in the same city you've lived in your whole life, by the way, then you don't have the mentality for this level of soccer, right? I understand if you want to back yourself and you want to say like I'm good enough to make it in MLS. Right. Alexander Guboglu had a much better season than Owen Graham Roche. So if he says that, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. With respect to Owen Graham Roche, if that's a mentality, again, I will always support players like backing themselves, right? Jonathan Yves did not want a loan. He stayed in Montreal, he proved himself, and he ended up making some space for him in the squad. And then other reasons he left. Nathan Saliba straight up said, "No, I'm not getting loaned out." And look at him now, right? He's scoring in Belgium. So, Owen Graham Roche is different because we didn't really get to see him. And every single time we did get to see him, it was in a very weird situation where they had to either defend a lead or he was there and he was like, getting double teamed by center backs. So I think, a loan might be a good option for him.
It might be a good option also for the mentoring. Like if you're having a David Chonier or Sean Rea, former players that maybe didn't accept the loan or didn't do this, where they can talk to him and be like, hey man, like this is what can happen for good or for bad, right? If you choose, because the CPL is not a bad thing. Like it's being and playing in the CPL has its merits too, and you can make a career out of it if you want to, right? So
we spoken to Graham Roche and we had an interview on the podcast with Alexander Guboglu. So like I've had the chance to speak with both of them and they're good kids, and
yeah.
It's not like I'm gonna do it my own way and there's no ego there. That's not an issue. It's more just like will you embrace it? I think that's tough for every player, right? Regardless of age, in a professional setting, you have to kind of put your pride aside and be like, maybe I go here just to for growth.
It's crazy what we're talking about right now, man. A CPL team in
Yeah,
Montreal.
what a world we live in.
It's just crazy. Anyways, I just had a quick reflection on that. Let's finish off the podcast with one last topic. As you guys know, we try to fit everything in one podcast, all the professional teams, and we're gonna finish off with Roses FC, where the latest news was that Jody Smith came to a mutual contract termination with the Roses FC. Which to me, when I read that, Elias, I'm sorry, I was taken aback. I said, what the hell? Now, I understand, I fully get that Jody Smith kind of lost her starting position in the left back once Megan Sauvé kind of was moved there and she performed much better. But I still think, and we talked about this in the postmortem, this is one of the, because they also lost, they also released Larry Shank, right? And I still don't know where this is going because this is a crucial position for Roses FC, and I believe she will. Maybe it wasn't necessarily her ambitions per se, or maybe she didn't like the project that she was placed in, but it's kind of worrisome that they don't have much depth there now because unless some signatures are coming up in that position. But what do you think of this, Elias, when you see this?
Oh, I mean, it's unfortunate because I really did like Jodie Smith, but at the same time, if she doesn't want to be second string, because let's face it, Megan Sauvé was excellent at left back. If she doesn't want to be a second stringer, she's gonna want to look, she's gonna want to look elsewhere. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, especially when you're a young, she's 21, 22, right?
Yeah.
So that comes with the territory, I guess. Um, in a perfect world, yeah, you have both of them, and then you have an amazing replacement for Megan Sauvé, and a very, very good option off the bench. If you want to move Megan Sauvé around or rotate her and give her a break. Um, but that's it, right? You're 21. You don't necessarily want to be second string at 21. Uh, if you feel like you should be a starter. So again, we just talked about it, right? I will never be upset when a player bets on themselves, and so I hope she does good things. I hope she finds success wherever she ends up. And it's unfortunate because again, I really did like the product she had on field.
I definitely thought she brought something different. To me,
Yeah.
this means either like I mentioned, there's going to be some announcements soon enough. But more than anything, I feel like maybe Robert Rosatoyi might be looking to change the formation. So maybe a natural fullback like Jody Smith might not be necessarily the profile he's looking for next year. We'll wait and see. But the next signatures are going to be crucial to see what direction Rose FC is going, because
Yeah.
we've already talked about a player like Lara Shank being released and nothing has come up from that. There's been no new signatures that I know of that have been announced that replace a Levershenk or
Mhm.
have necessarily shown which direction Roses FC are going up in 2026. Elias, I'm sorry, but it's going to be a huge year for Roses FC, especially
Yeah.
with FC Supra knocking on the door. The David Chouanière signature for FC Supra is a big one, and it's going to impact CF Montreal, and it's going to impact the Roses FC in attendance and all that, because David Chouanière is the kind of name that brings people to the stadium. So I did ask also the David Chouanière. I was like, do you feel any kind of pressure carrying the name Chouanière and playing here in Quebec? And again, this is why I think he's going to wear the captain's armband. He was like, no, I love it. I've been waiting for this moment my whole life to play in front of my family. So absolutely cherish this. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this kid is that it feels right at home where he's at. So again, we're gonna keep a close eye on it, Elias, the next few weeks. It feels like their news are dropping within the hour, when we speak. But we love it, guys. We're for those of you who joined us tonight. We're so happy that you joined us. We wish you guys to stay safe and have fun this holiday season. You guys, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You guys are our gifts for the holidays. You guys give us a
Oh,
lot of love, all the responses. Elias, I love you, man. This year has been great. If we don't talk before the New Year's, I mean we're always talking, but if we don't
yeah.
get on the pod before the New Year's, um, it's been super fun this year. I had a blast, and it's only going to be more fun in 2026. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice. Apologize for that. Let's just finish up with that. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. As always, the podcast will always be free to listen and watch on all of our platforms. Make sure to check out our Patreon page for exclusive member content and all of our social media platforms for more content, and follow my account as well as Elias for daily updates. A big shout out to all of you who joined the Patreon this week, and thank you again to all of you that tuned in tonight. Happy holidays from the Ball is Round, and see you next time for episode 247.
2020